Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our last revision blast, actually, for 2024. So we're actually starting back again. Just if anyone wanted to make a note, we've obviously got this on our Instagram, which is Tutor to You Psych, if you wanted to look at the schedule. But we're actually not going to be back after this evening until the 14th of January, which again we're keeping to our Tuesday slot, 6 to 6:30. Don't forget, if you've missed any of our previous revision blasts, you can obviously play back on YouTube, so you can watch those back as part of your revision if you've missed any of the topics. Tonight, we're going to be covering memory, the tricky bits, okay? So the bits that students tend to struggle with in the exam, okay? So without further ado, we're going to get started. Mel's going to start us off this evening, and we're planning to be around about half hour, 40 minutes.
Wonderful. So let's get started, guys. So we're going to move on to our first quite straightforward activity. If you've been with us before, you'll have done this before. True or false. So all you need to do is pop your answer in the answer box. So the first one, there are 3 types of declarative memory. Is that true or is it false? There's 3 types of declarative memory. Okay, we've got false coming in from Layla. We've got Mariam saying true. We've got a few falses now, so we've got a few more people coming through. Should we see what the answer is for this first one? Well done if you said false. I think majority of us went with false on this one, so I'm going to push you a little bit further. How many types of declarative memory are there, and what ones are declarative? If you can pop your answer in the chat box for that one. So we just go back to the previous one. So how many types of declarative memory are there? See if anyone knows. So out of your long-term memory, which one's declarative? Okay, we've got 2, semantic and episodic. Good, okay. Surfing the sport, I can see you asking Layla. So the next one's come up. What is surfing? So surfing is a type of procedural memory. So the activity of doing surfing is a procedural memory. So we're talking about the sport here. Well done for those who are coming through with 2 saying episodic and semantic. So new question now on the screen. Okay, good. So we've got quite a few coming through at the same time there, actually, on my computer. Well done. Let's have a little look what the answer is for this one. Good, excellent. So you would be true. Procedural memory, if you can pop in the chat really quickly for me. What is a procedural memory? What does that mean? Why would surfing be a procedural memory? So what is a procedural memory and why would surfing be considered one? How to do something? Yeah, we could say how to do something. Can you push that a little bit further? What does that mean, how to do something? Okay, good. So memories of skills that are automatic, remembering how to do something, and action skills. Excellent, perfect. Let's go on to the next one. Okay, let's have a little look at this one. A little bit more difficult, this one. This is why this one is memory, the tricky part. So implicit memories are unconscious. Good, Rach, and good, Leona, going through for those last ones. That's great. Some good knowledge there. Procedural. What about this one? Implicit memories are unconscious. Okay, we've got a couple of true, We've got one false coming in. Any other answers before we have a little look at the answer here? Anyone take a guess? Okay, let's see what the answer is here. I think we've got a bit of a mix. Good, well done if you were saying implicit memories are unconscious. They're the ones that we necessarily don't have to think about. Excellent, or we don't always remember when we've made them. Okay, should we keep going? So next one, knowing how to say hello in English is a semantic memory. So you're going to have to think about what is a semantic memory? What does that mean? And how do we say hello in English? Would that be considered to be semantic or not? I mean, I can say, saying, what can I say is a definition for procedural memory? So it's the things which are action-based, muscle-based memory skills, things that we've learned, any skill that you've got. Let's have a little look at this one. Okay, shall we have a little look at the answer? We've got loads of coming in. Okay, so knowing how to say hello in English is not considered to be a semantic memory. Why do we think it might not be considered to be a semantic memory? Because we've got a lot of truths coming in here. Why do we think this one might be false? Yeah, okay. So particularly if you're going to be talking about if you're English and you can say hello and it's your first language, it's not fully general knowledge. Yeah, it's more procedural. It's more something that we would naturally. It's more something that we would just be able to naturally do. So it'd be more procedural, muscle based. Okay, shall we keep going? So episodic and semantic memories are conscious. We're going to move through these ones a little bit more quickly now. So episodic and semantic memories are conscious. What have we got here? Okay, we've got a couple of truths coming in. Good, excellent. Remember, always stick to your guns. Don't conform on these. If you think that people are wrong around you, then that's okay to say so. We've got a lot of truths coming in though. So let's have a little look at the answer here. Excellent. Good. Okay. They're conscious. We can often talk about them. So, for example, if you know that what you did on your first birthday or your holiday you've just been on, you're able to talk about it and you have to consciously think about them. It doesn't just naturally come to you often. Okay. So I'm going to pass you back over now to Laura for this one for confusing pairs.
Okay, guys, so for this one, I want to know if the key phrases or studies, if you like, match up with the definitions or descriptors correctly. So, what we want in the chat box here is whether this is correct or whether it's false. So, we've got two studies, Badley and Hitch and Postman. So, here you really need to know your studies for memory. Again, you might have been taught slightly different studies, and that's absolutely fine. These are not quoted in the spec, so don't panic, don't worry. But these do tend to be quite common studies that do tend to get taught for these topic areas. So have a read of the descriptors. Are they the correct way round? So we've got some answers coming through. Some of you are saying correct. Wait for a few others to have a go. So make sure you're reading this carefully. Badley and Hitch, who were their participants? Badley and Hitch have done quite a few studies, obviously, so it's quite easy to get muddled here. So I think quite a lot of us are saying true and correct. Let's have a look if this is correct then, guys. So let's see, what is the answer? So these are actually not correct. Okay. Postman did a general study here on retroactive interference with lists of word and found that learning items in the second list interfered with participants' ability to recall the first list, which is obviously an example of retroactive interference. Whereas Badley and Hitch, if you remember, found that I think it was rugby players who played most matches forgot proportionally more names of the teams they had played in comparison to those players who missed some games due to injury. Okay, so just make sure that we've kind of got those studies the right way around. It's really the findings we want to try and remember and retain there, guys. Let's have a look at our next confusing pairs then. All right, so are these the correct way round? We've got state dependent forgetting, colour of walls, context dependent forgetting, mood. Okay, so I think India, you got there in first. Well done. Anybody else want to have a go? So these are our kind of two types of cue dependent forgetting, if you like, of which we have two. We've got context or state. Yeah, so a lot of us, I think, are pretty much saying that this is false. It's incorrect. If you said that, you are in actual fact correct. So when we talk about state, we're really talking about more like the internal state of yourself. Okay, so that would be mood. Context, you're talking about the actual context of the environment. Okay, so that could be the color of walls, for example. Okay, so again, good not to get those two muddled, but also a really great thing that will help you distinguish between these two is making sure you've got the relevant studies. Can anybody give me the name of the relevant study for context dependent forgetting, which is quite a famous one? Can anybody remember the name of that or what it was to do with for context dependent forgetting? Excellent. So we've got the badly divers one. Yeah, the deep sea divers one. Excellent. Well done, guys. Let's have a look at our last confusing pairs then. So our next one is episodic and semantic memory. So we've got episodic is located temporal lobes and semantic memory is located in the hippocampus and temporal lobes. Are these correct? So if you're looking at this and thinking, oh, why do I need to know that, the kind of areas of the brain where these memories are? You don't need to know it as such, in the sense that, it's not in the spec for you to know per se. However, you could get a question in the exam that asks you to distinguish the difference between these types of memories, in which case this would be relevant and you would need to be able to give a difference, a contrast, if you like. And one of the contrasts you can use is actually they're located in different areas of the brain. So we've got, where some of us are saying yes here. Are we all in agreement with that, everyone in the room tonight? Does anybody want to have a go at an answer for this one? Episodic is temporal, semantic, hippocampus, and temporal. Even if you want to guess, and I really encourage guessing, because in the exam, you might find yourself in a situation where you don't know how to answer a question. And what we don't want you to do is leave it blank, because that's a guaranteed 0. So you want to have a go at everything. Okay. All right, so we've got a mixture of answers. That's good to see. Yep, so we've got some incorrects coming up. Okay, let's have a reveal. What have we got for the correct answer? Is this correct? So it's not. So those of you that answered those last 3, Layla, Ruby, Leona, well done, incorrect. Yes, so semantic memory is located actually in the temporal lobes. So that was correct, but just temporal. But episodic is temporal and hippocampus. Okay, so I'm going to pass you back over to Mel now for Amend the Gap activity. Well done, everyone.
Okay, so we're going to have a go at Mend the Gap now, and it's quite nice to see some familiar names coming through, having a go at some of these activities. As Laura said, always take a guess, guys, because these are a little bit more difficult. So it's really challenging that extra knowledge that we're going to look at. So for this activity, we've got a passage of text here, and I'm not going to give you too much information. You'll be able to have a read of it on the screen. What you should be able to see is that some of the words have been blanked over, so we can see these black boxes. So all I want you to do is try and go through and tell me what is it that's missing. Now, if you can do it in one piece of text, so rather than sending separate answers, that will be really good. So the case of C blank, W blank, what are we mending there? Supports that there are different types of long-term memory. Following a brain infection, his P blank memory seemed intact. For example, being able to dress himself and even play the piano, but his episodic memory was severely damaged. When his wife left the room and returned, even after only a few blank, he would greet her as if they had not seen each other for years. He kept a diary in which he constantly wrote that he was just regaining what every few minutes. This supports that there are different stores for different types of long-term memory. Well done, guys. Some of you are getting some of those answers in before I've even finished reading that text, so well done. So we've got a few saying Clive Waring for the first couple. I think most people have gone for that one. So well done, Ev. Well done, Mariam, Layla, Rach, Ruby, India. So let's have a little look. We've got a few people saying procedural for the next one. So the idea that his procedural memory seemed intact because he was able to dress himself. So that's brilliant, yeah, because he's got that muscle memory, the things he was able to do. And he could even play the piano. He's a really, really impressive case study to use, Clive Waring. Yeah, I think most people are going for minutes. So even after only a few minutes, when his wife would leave the room and return, he couldn't even remember seeing her. So he acted like he was seeing her for the first time again. And then this last one, he kept a diary in which he constantly wrote that he was just regaining consciousness. So well done, Ev. You put question mark next to that. You perfectly correct. So it's really good to go with your gut with that one. Well done also to Mariam. Layla, consciousness. Yeah, Rage. So some really, really strong answers coming in here. This one is a really good case study to use. If you're unsure on your case studies, make sure you really read up on Clive Waring, because there's lots of different things that you can use them for. Okay, Laura, over to you for 30-second challenge.
Okay, provide an example of a type of retroactive interference. For this, we want an actual example. So thinking out the box, if you were trying to explain retroactive interference to someone that didn't know psychology, what example would you give them to demonstrate it? Off you go. Excellent. We've got some really good examples coming through. I hope some of you don't mind. I'm going to actually share these because they're actually quite good. So we've got one here, trying to remember an old address, but the new address gets in the way or affects the old memory, if you like. We've got new psychology affects old content. That's a good one, Leona, because I'm sure that actually does happen to a lot of students that sit A-level. We've got a new phone number disrupting the ability to remember an old phone number. So I guess the cases here, they're really good, and the ones that follow that as well. The idea here is that the old memory is affected by the new. And the way I remember that is retro means old. So it's always the old memory that's affected by the new. So retroactive, old memory is affected by new. So here we've got for our answer, you have trouble remembering your primary school teacher's name as you've learnt so many new ones since being in secondary school. Okay. Yep, so really, really good examples, and that's what you want. You know, if you get that question in the exam asking you to outline what's meant by retroactive interference for 4 marks, I would expect, and we would expect you to put an example there to demonstrate your knowledge in a depth. Okay, so that's really good to have examples for these key terms. Excellent. Let's look at our next 30-second challenge then question. We have, what other variable for interference affects the degree of forgetting? Off we go. All right, we've got a couple of answers, but proactive interference is a type of interference. We're asking what other variable can affect all types of interference. So I'm actually going to give you a bit of a clue. If you were learning 2 languages and you had trouble remembering the first language you learnt because the 2 languages were excellent, well done, Ruby. You hit it on the head there. Similarity. Yeah, let's have a look at our answer. So basically, what you need to know, and this is going to be really helpful for STEMs scenarios that they give you in the exam, when we see a STEM where the memories are similar, the degree of forgetting increases, or that is affected by. Okay, so similarity, yeah, is affected here. Well done. Okay, our last 30-second question then. We've got name a study, and be careful here, for context state dependent forgetting. Off we go. Excellent. We've got a variety of studies coming in here. Leona, well done getting in there first with the Goodwin one. That's actually the one that I'm gonna discuss. So that is our answer, the Goodwin one. That doesn't mean that's the be or an end all. There are other studies, but just in case you're wondering, obviously a lot of students do learn the deep sea diver study for context dependent forgetting in terms to do with the actual environment. However, a lot of students don't. Sometimes they kind of avoid the study for state. So please make sure you have a study for both. Okay. So the state one, Goodwin. Can anybody elaborate on the Goodwin? That is aware of what the procedure was there, or the findings even. What did he do for his procedure? Who were his participants? And Leona, I know you're the only one there that's put it down, but I find it hard to believe that others wouldn't know this study. So anyone want to elaborate on their study that put in the chat box as well, just to demonstrate that it is really state dependent. I can see some of you have put drug trials, and yeah, drug trials, anything drug induced would be a state dependent forgetting study. You're quite right. The diver study isn't for state. Remember, state is internal, okay? And when we're talking about the deep sea diver study, we're talking about context, okay? Context only. Yeah, excellent. Well done, Leona. So Goodwin did a study whereby I think it was students. He saw whether people's memory would change based on whether they were under the influence on alcohol. So basically, he actually got students to learn a list of words drunk, and then got them to recall drunk. So in the same state. He also got them to be sober when learning and then drunk when recalling. So different states, and to see what effect that had. Evidently, we can guess probably the findings were that the same state there was better increased recall, basically. So that's the Goodwin study, and I'm sure the other studies that you guys have mentioned have similar findings to that. So I'm going to pass you over to Mel now for the next activity, which is our lineup.
Okay, guys, so we're going to have a little look now at a difference focus where we're going to have a little look at the cognitive interview. It's one that people like, but often tend to forget to revise. They see it's being quite straightforward, quite easy. So, what we're going to see here is a couple of questions come up, and all of the questions are related to either A, B, C, or D, which are all elements of our cognitive interview. So, we'll put the question up one at a time. And if you think you know the answer from the first question, feel free to pop it down and you can pop it in the chat straight away. If you want to hold off, you're not entirely sure, then you can stick with what you think it might be. And as we sort of go through each question, the answer should become a little bit more obvious. So the first clue that you've got to choose from our lineup is that it encourages many retrieval pathways. So it encourages many retrieval pathways. So have a think whether that is lending you towards one. So we've got D, we've got B coming in here. It's a difficult one to start with. C. Okay, so number 2, let's see whether this changes your answer. It disrupts the effect of expectations. It disrupts the effect of what you maybe expect to see or what you expected to recall, maybe. Got a real mixed bag coming in here. So we've got a few D's. Is Ruby stuck with D? No, Ruby's changed from B to D. Let's have a little look. Has anyone else changed? Amina has changed from B to D. Okay, what about this one now? This might hint it to a little bit more. Describes the event from the passerby. So if you were going to get a passerby to describe the event, where do we think we'd be going with this one? Ooh, quite a lot of changes on that one. And your final one, your final clue, let's see whether you're going to stick with your C or D, which it looks like the majority have gone for, a couple with B. It disrupts the effect of schema on your recall. So this element of the cognitive interview disrupts the effect of schema on recall. Oh, we've got a few A's entering the mix now. I'm going to give you 10 more seconds to see what we've got. I think we've got a bit of a mixed bag between C and between A. Really read each of them, guys. Try and think, for the one you've said, would all of those be correct for? So if the one you've gone with, is all of those statements correct for that one? Is it relevant to that one? Okay, let's have a little look at the answer then. Which one did we have? Well done if you ended up on C, which it looks like quite a few of you did. So I think we've got Ed, we've got India, Ruby, Tops, Kendra, Yasmin. India, well done, because it looks like you had C from an earlier one as well. I think maybe some others did. Yeah, now we're not saying that, this isn't completely correct just for this one. If we look at the last one, disrupts the effect of schema on recall, you could argue, I've seen a few people change to A, that is why we do context reinstatement as well. Tell me everything about the context, essentially. Tell me what the weather was like, whether you were hungry that morning, because that stops your schema and your sort of package of information that you expect to see. But what you've really got to do here is read each element. And number 3, I think, for most of you was the biggest hint. If you're describing the event from the passerby, then this is where we're going to recall from a change perspective. You're going to get somebody else to think about it. And I'm just going to draw your attention to something here. If you get what we quite often see in the exam, if you get a scenario-based question on this, where you see an incident has happened and they ask you to discuss the cognitive interview, make sure you really apply each stage. So if it's a STEM question where an incident happens, I don't know, somebody's handbag's been stolen, really make sure you actually apply each one. So rather than just saying, they could recall it from a change perspective, make sure you say who. If you say that they should report everything, give some application items. What sort of things could they report which is relevant to that scenario? recall in the reverse order, what part of that scenario should they be starting from? So don't be generic with these questions if it's an application question, but well done. I think a lot of you got that one correct. So we're going to move on to the next activity, which is jigsaw.
Great. Well done, Mel. Yeah, that was excellent. That piece of advice is A star really. A lot of students do miss that, don't they? You've really got to try and contextualize, and that's not just for cognitive interview, that's for really any STEMs. You really got to make sure you contextualize, often a skill that students miss out in the exam. So we're going to stay on the same topic as cognitive interview now. We've got a bit of a slightly different way to learn this topic now. It's the jigsaw. You're going to see some pieces on the board, and you're going to have to try and match them up with the correct phrases. So if we have a look at what we've got for the phrases on the board, we're going to go through this one by one, so as opposed to you putting all your answers down. So I just want you to write down number one, and then I want you to give me the letter you think it corresponds to. So we've got our 4 cognitive interview kind of factors here. One is context reinstatement. Which letter matches number one, please? So again, always good to have a read of all of them first. Might not be obvious. Excellent. Okay, so we've got our first one, I believe. 1A. Let's have a look then at the next slide. So we do have 1A. So recalling how we felt. Remember is state, and the environment is our context. We know that these details act as cues to recall. Excellent. Well done, everybody, for getting that correct. What about number 2 then? Report everything. Which letter corresponds with number 2? Yep, excellent. Well done. So Ruby, you got in there first. I think we've all got the right answer there. Yes, so it is absolutely B. Well done. So report everything. Witnesses might not realise that some details are actually important, and actually those details could help them trigger other significant information. So report everything, very important. So what have we got for 3? Recall from a change perspective. What one is number 3 then? Recall from a change perspective. Excellent. Boy, your answers are coming through so quick. I think, Hannah, I think you got in there first with that one. Yeah, let's have a look. So, recall from a change perspective is D, encourages many retrieval pathways, and that's done to disrupt the effect of expectations and schema on recall. And of course, we have our last one here, recall in reverse order, our last one that's remaining C. When events are recalled in normal order, witnesses reconstruct based on their schemas. Excellent. Really good going, guys. So we've got a couple of questions just to finish the session tonight. So we're going to do a what is the difference and then a decode the question. Mel's going to start us off with this one.
Okay, guys, so we've spoken about this quite a lot tonight, and I really want to test your knowledge here now. So this is just a simple, quick question where I want you to focus on what is the difference between context cue failure and state cue failure. So don't just tell me what they are, what makes them different. This is one of those questions where you would want to have maybe a whereas or on the other hand. So what is the difference? What makes them different from each other? Try and pop something in the chat box for me if you can. And even better if you can provide an example. Okay, we've got context is external, state is internal. Can you give me a little bit more? What does that mean? So what do we mean by internal? What are we talking about here? When would this be likely to happen? So Mariam, context is based on the environment, whereas state is internal or biological state. Again, yeah, give me more of an example on that one. What do we mean by internal or biological state? What are we maybe hinting at here? So why might your internal state be different? Can you give me an example of how your internal state might be different? Oh, here we go. We've got some detailed answers coming in here. So context cue failure refers to environmental external factors. So you give me the example of the study there, Ruby. So deep sea dives are underwater. Whereas state cue failure is due to internal states. So for example, having consumed alcohol or not. Good. Context, Layla, is based on external environment, where state is based on internal psychological state, such as mood versus where you were. That's a really good example. So we've got mood in there, and we've got a lot of internal versus external. We've got anxiety, nerves, a lot of things going on here. This is really good. Happiness, anger might be some of those internal things. Let's have a little look at what we've got down for this one. Okay, good. So state Q failure is when we forget information due to our emotional or psychological state being different at learning and recall time. And that's really important here. So what we're saying is when you made that initial memory, the state, the mental state or the internal or the psychological state you were in is now different when you then come to try and recall that. So you might have done this before if you've had an argument with someone, maybe you've got really, really angry, you've said a lot of things that you then leave, you calm down, and someone says, "What did you say?" And you go, "I can't remember." Because at the time, you were really frustrated, you were angry, you said some things that maybe you now have forgotten, now you've calmed down. So we could talk about emotional state, psychological state, we've got anxiety, we've got alcohol, people were saying, we talked about the drug study earlier, so that's a good one. Now, notice this question is, what is the difference? So it's not good enough to just state what they both are. You need to be getting those words in, such as in contrast or whereas. This is where you say to the examiner, "Hello, like I'm going to show you I actually know a difference between them." So in contrast, context cue failure is when we forget due to our surroundings being different at learning and recall times. So if you ever seen Mean Girls, you'll remember that time that Katie Harron, she's got to the maths competition and she's really, really trying to think what the answer is, but she can't because she's not in the environment at that time. And she goes back to the classroom, if you remember, and she manages to look through the board. So this is why often we say students will probably be better sitting their exams in the classroom rather than in an exam hall, because it's where we learn that information, and then the environment will be the same when we try to recall it. So just make sure your language is really clear when you're talking about state and context forgetting. The idea that we learn something in a different state or in a different environment to what we then recall it in. So well done. That's some brilliant answers that have come through there. Moving on to our final question now. So this one is over to you, Lara. Decode the question.
Okay, so for this one, slightly different. We're not going to answer this, but what I'd like to know from you guys in terms of exam technique, what should you be spotting or highlighting, if you like, in this question before you start writing your answer? Because what a lot of students do is they'll read this question. Often they're going to answer this incorrectly. So, okay, well done, Ruby EV. So, okay, that's one of our command words here is evaluate. Is that enough? Is that just it? Yeah, we not necessarily, Layla. Yeah, not we wouldn't necessarily have to give both a strength and a weakness as long as we're evaluating. And again, this is a 4 marker, so strategy here, just going off a bit, might be, I'm going to write about one evaluation point in lots of detail and depth, or it might be, okay, I've got a couple of points in lesser detail, and I'm going to talk about those too. So we've got evaluate as one of our command words. What else have we got? Cognitive interview. Yeah, okay. We've got actually a meaning. You put outline what makes it better. In other words, you're contrasting how it's better maybe than something like the standard police interview, perhaps. Yes. The 4 marks we do need to take note of. Well done, Leona. That's really for our kind of time limit here that we should be spending on this question. So roughly about 5 minutes. There's a word after evaluate that I don't think anyone's quite highlighted yet that we need to. Yeah, tops, well done. You've nearly got them all there. So we've got evaluate, we've got cognitive interview as the topic area, and in terms of what, explaining what will the improving the accuracy of eyewitness testimony. Good. Anything else? Yeah, Hannah, Kendra, Layla, Evie, well done, you. So, okay, let's go through our highlights here for this one and see what we've come up with in terms of what's really important to take note of. So, quite right, as you all noticed at the start, evaluate. Okay, so we're not outlining here. If you outlined, you're not going to get credit. Okay, that's not what it's asking you. So when we're talking about evaluate, we're saying, yeah, okay, it could be strengths and or weaknesses. Okay. And we're talking about the cognitive interview, but just not to evaluate the cognitive interview. We're talking about the use of it. Okay, so the use of it in terms of using it as a technique to improve the accuracy of eyewitness testimony. So yeah, you would be doing an evaluative paragraph, Poppy, yeah, an AO3 paragraph. And like I said, your strategy here, if you've got a really good kind of detailed point, 1 point, you could get away with doing that for 4 marks if you wanted to. If you've got a briefer point, then I would say do 2 for 4 marks, just to be safe there, to make sure that you've got enough breadth, okay? Because you're definitely not probably going to have enough depth there. Excellent. Well done, guys. Well, that concludes our revision blast for our memory tricky bits this evening. You guys have done really, really well, and they were the tricky bits of memory. We just want to remind you that you can watch this back on playback at any point for revision, and also our previous revision blasts that are all up on YouTube. I just want to remind you this is the last one of 2024. So I want to say a huge congratulations to all of you for partaking. Well done on all your efforts so far. Have a great, great festive period and time off. I know a lot of you are probably going to have maybe mocks when you get back. Some of you might have already had mocks. We've got a multitude of resources on Tutor2U to help you through that revision process and through your mocks. But otherwise, we are going to be seeing you on the 14th of January, and we're going to be looking at attachment, the tricky bits for that one. But as I said before, go and follow us on Tutor2U Psych on Instagram, and we'll obviously display everything on there in terms of our dates and our topics for our revision blasts. So we'll see you in 2025, everybody. Take care.
Well done, guys. Have a lovely Christmas.